Welcome to the Blue Collar Gold Podcast, the podcast that shows you how to build a world-class service business from the dirt up. And now, your host, Mark Stoner.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Blue Collar Gold Podcast. Many of you know I lost my father this week. So I apologize for having a gap in my podcast. I got some emails and notices that what happened. Going through quite a bit. I've said it before that I lost my father was going through Alzheimer's and dementia, and this last week he did pass. Really hard for me because we were so close, and but it was for the best. Anybody that's seen that happen to a person, you don't want to see it keep happening to them, and you need them to have peace, and he has. And so, this episode I want to talk about kind of some of those things that fathers bring to their kids, or they can bring. It was funny. I had to speak at my dad's funeral. I didn't have to. I wanted to, and I thought I was going to break down and not be able to talk. But I realized that after days and days of emotion, you can do it. I mean, you can do it, and I owed it to him. And so the funny thing was, before I started to go there, I got a haircut. And I was getting a haircut, and the lady asked me, she said, "How are you doing, honey?" She could tell I looked pretty stressed and wore out. I said, "I've been better." And she said, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that." She goes, What's wrong?" And I've never had this lady cut my hair ever. I go to a place all the time, and my guy had started his own business. he had got out on his own, and last week he started his own hair salon, and he was awesome. That's why I went to him all the time. He was great, but he never let on he was starting his own business. So anyway, I had a new person cutting my hair. And she said, I told her I lost him, and she said, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that." And she said, how old are you? I said, "I'm 52. She said, "You're 52? And I said, "Yeah." She said, "You had him for 52 years, and he's only been gone 2 days." And she said, "Just think of all the time you did have with him, and what he put into you, and what he meant to you, and what he is passing on with you. That's 52 years. That's good. That's a good amount of time." She said, "I know people never knew their father. I knew people had their father die when they were young kids. I knew people had fathers that were never around, or were never, they were away from them, or couldn't get along with them, and never knew them. So you can be sad, but you can't be too sad." And I said, "You're right." I said, "You're right." She said, "Well, what did he pass from?" And I said, "He had Alzheimer's and dementia." And she said, "Well, honey, he was gone a long time ago. He was already gone. His body was just following." And I said, "That's true too." And I come in for a haircut, now I'm getting a psychological evaluation and lesson. But she was right. She was right. I was super lucky, super fortunate. And so we kept talking, and she was really funny. She was really lifted my spirits, and she said, "You hold your head up, and you go on, and it was a good haircut. It took a little too long. I needed her to speed up because I was in a rush, but it was really good." But I got to speak at the funeral, and I got to remember him, the funny stuff about him. And that's what, you want to remember. The funny little quirks And sorry, as we go through this, it's funny that the little things that can aggravate you about people are also the ones that you remember. Told myself I wasn't going to do this, but if we're going to be real, then let's be real. So it was great. I actually didn't cry much when I spoke at the funeral, just a little bit, but I guess today is a little bit different. But one last thing before I move on, one of the harder things was, I had my calendar, and it was right before he passed, and I was, I put in notes to call my son, although my son tells me I never call him or don't call him enough. But in that note, when I get ready to put it in, it automatically says call Sax, my son, and Dad. And when it came up this last time, I realized I would never talk to him again. That was tough. So this message is to make sure you are doing the right things, you are appreciating the right things. The little things that might aggravate you are some of the things you'll miss. So let's keep going. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to keep going, and we will. And you, as a listener, hopefully you're making, good memories in other people's lives, because everybody coming through the funeral had almost the same story. Your dad was a great guy. He was funny. He was my best friend. He made my life better. And at the end, that's what it's about. I also told a story about, he's from a different generation, and they thought differently. They were that Great Depression era, and they were poor. They grew up really poor. I saw pictures of his family as a kid that I hadn't seen before, and they didn't have anything, and they worked hard to build and have what we have, the basis of what we have today. And I can remember going into a restaurant with him all the time, and I think I've mentioned it before. I know I talked about it in my book, that I used to always hate it. That when you get a menu, he would always go down the right side of it and figure out what was the cheapest. And I'm like, just get whatever you want. And food didn't matter to him. He never went in to get what he wanted. He went in to get just the minimum to be there with us, but not spend any money. I'm sorry for this podcast. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm going to keep going. He would never, it wasn't, so again, I say he was addicted to cheap. He was addicted to, if it was cheap, then it was a good deal. And he got going to these school auctions. He got to help with these school auctions, and he helped a guy with them. And so whatever they couldn't sell at the school auction, my dad ended up would buy it. So, they would sell it. So he got, my cousin called them a lot of treasures, and it was so funny, the treasures that he would bring home. But one time he brought home like 200 of those school lunch plates that were divided into three, like they were like lime green, and he brought those home, thought that would be a good thing for when we had a lot of guests over. And this one time I was in barbecue, I do pro barbecue, and he said, "Hey, do you need any ladles?" And I'm like soup ladles? And he said, "Yeah, like ladles." He goes, "I can get some." I said, "Not really." He goes, "Well," I said, I could use one, I guess. Well, he met me. I was driving to Indianapolis for something. He met me halfway, and he said, he said, "Hey, come look at what I got in the trunk." So I go to the trunk, and he's got 200 ladles in the back of the trunk. Just must be from the commissary of the schools, and there are all these ladles. And he goes, "How many do you want?" And I said, "I don't know, 5, I guess." But that was him. He was always thinking of others. He saw those. He thought they could help, and he decided to buy them to help. It could help somebody. And this other time, I told him I needed a TV for my son's bedroom. He's like, "Oh, I run into TVs all the time at the school auctions." I'm like, "Okay, if you find one, get it." And so he calls me. He goes, "I got a TV for his room. When do you want to meet?" And I said, "Well, anytime." He goes, "Well, actually, I've got 3 of them." And I'm like, "Uh-oh, I know my dad, and if he wouldn't have spent much for him, especially if he got 3 of them, this is probably not a good sign." And sure enough, it wasn't. When he brought them, they had the click knobs, and this was probably 10 years ago or so, maybe 12 years ago. Still click knobs, no remotes, and it was the real thick, deep ones, and it was like a 19-inch or something. I'm like, "Dad, they just had to be thrown away. There wasn't anything you could do with them." But again, he was just always wanting to help people, and he'll be remembered as that kind of guy. But I wanted to talk about another thing. I'm going to switch subjects. Thank you for bearing with me on that. I felt like I probably needed to get that out too and talk about it. It's pretty exciting in the chocolate business right now. My daughter and I are working pretty feverishly. We were trying to get open for October 28th, which is National Chocolate Day. We're going to have a launch of some social media stuff. The name of the business is Poppy and Peep. PEEP, and we have some really fun stuff going with it, and we've been working on recipes and really getting the commercial kitchen set up. They're actually painting it today and tomorrow, the final colors on the inside. It's in Nashville, and it's going to be a fun thing. So if you're ever through Nashville, look us up. Come see us if you like chocolate. I'll do some more things on this show about it as we get going. And it's really, I can tell that I'm making memories with my daughter too, through this time that we struggle. We don't agree on everything. We argue. We've tried to divide I'm responsible for production and the money, and she's responsible for design and the look and feel of things. And she's really, really good at it, and she's really energetic, but we butt heads at times, and she's really worried about the look of things, and I'm worried about how the thing functions. And there's good and bad about that. And so we're having a really great time. And we've got a friend, Stephanie. She's a listener of this show. Stephanie's really been key to helping us. She's just full of energy, and we've got really good people around us that are helping. And we're very excited. So in the next coming weeks, we will get it launched so that we're launched in time for, the holidays. But the point that really, if you're starting a business, I say it a lot, you cannot know all the things you're going to run into to start. And you can't get discouraged from them, because every single person that starts a business or starts a new division in their business runs into unseen problems. I can't tell you how many problems we've run into, but it's really how you approach problems. How strong are you? How good are you at overcoming problems? How do you handle problems? Do you wig out? Do you make things worse on everybody around you? Everything goes wrong for us, always. Like the signage was wrong. The signage was almost 3 times more expensive than I thought it was going to be. The health department had different rules. The health department then split into two divisions recently. One was Department of Agriculture, one was health. So then we got all these people coming, and then they were the wrong people. Codes came in and disallowed a lot of the things we had started on, and we had to change a lot of things. Suppliers and vendors, and we got some brand new machinery in to make what's called bean to bar chocolate. So we take it from all the way roasting the beans all the way through to what's called melanging and making it into chocolate. The whole process, we're doing it where, for a certain line of chocolate we're doing. Well, the second roast, my brand new bean roaster broke. It's just over and over and over when you're starting a business. And so if anybody's out there on the sidelines thinking they want to start a business, but they don't have it all figured out, that's completely the wrong way to think about business anyway. You can't figure it out. There's no way to figure it out. You have to get in. And the true test, if you can run a business, is how you handle problems. If you're bad at handling problems and stress, you should not start your own business. You should work for somebody else. And there's nothing wrong with working for somebody else. There's a whole group of people out there thinking that everyone has to have their own business. Well, it's simply not true. You do not. Many people should not have their own business. You're not wired for it. It'll make your life worse. It will not make your life better. It will make relationships worse. You can explode your family, your marriage, your kids, your health. Not everyone should own a business, but if how you handle stress, working hard can kind of sometimes calm you down, or having a lot of, changing things happen in your life and you're okay with it, then you're probably wired to handle a business. If you just get more and more amped up, a lot of people start businesses, but they probably shouldn't. So the point of this is, if you start a business and everything starts to fall apart, don't think it's just you. That's just the natural barriers that pop up whenever you make any kind of change. I have some house guests with us, and you might hear them in the back. They're musicians. They're in Nashville, friends of mine, lifelong friends, and Mickey and Kagan, and they are good friends of mine. And they're in Nashville, and they used to live here. They moved away. They're coming back. And, they're out there beating the streets and making new networks and finding new things. But, Mickey was like, man, this is harder than it was before. This is harder than it was back home in a small town in Maryland. I said, yeah, man, this is Nashville, Tennessee. And it's different than when you left 20 years ago. This town is moving. It's shaking. It doesn't really necessarily care about you as a new musician in town. There's a train load of musicians dropping off in this town every day. So, he's going around and networking, and it's tough, but you've got to give it years. And also, you can't just push through. Sometimes you just have to wait on things to happen, and they develop in their own time. Because you put them in motion doesn't mean it's going to happen right now. Just because you do X doesn't mean Y is going to happen when you think it's going to happen. It could happen that way, but it could happen years later too. It could finally, all those connections work, and all of a sudden you're a genius for doing it. But at the time, it doesn't feel like that. Everything I do when I start a business doesn't feel good. I like the excitement of starting something new, but it never works out like you think it will. And I talk about that a lot, in this podcast. In last week, I talked about the pivot, the pivot that you have to do. I want to brag on, we started a new division in Knoxville a couple months ago. And my person there, Timmy, who headed up that, has been absolutely amazing. If you really see the value of someone with complete focus. And I talk about it before. Complete focus is what it takes to catch, to really get momentum. And it's kind of like having a magnifying glass out on a sunny day, And if you don't have focus, you take that magnifying glass out and you keep moving it around, nothing ever catches fire. But if you will keep that focused on one spot for a minute, just to say some grass, all of a sudden that grass will catch on fire. And that's how business is. You need to be all in, 100%. Mickey and Kagan, they're 100%. They're all in. Timmy is all in. I love people that get all in. When somebody tells me they have 10 different things and none of them are really on fire, that's a problem. They say it's trying to catching two rabbits or chasing two rabbits. You're not going to catch either one of them. You need to stop and get one on fire. Well, Timmy's on fire. Timmy is networking everywhere. He's working hard. He's making a lot of sales. He's doing the good stuff that is more like building relationships. He's just good with people. He's good talking to people. He cares, and you can just really see it. He's taking off. So Timmy, if you're listening, congratulations. We're so proud of you here in Nashville, and I'm proud of you myself. And thank you for being you. And another thing was, he was one of our installers in Nashville. But in our divisions, installers don't necessarily sell a lot. They don't necessarily, they're not in front of a lot of people. They're behind a crew of people who sold the work and then they go and install. So I really never had a chance to know how great Timmy could be selling and working on his own. He's really self-motivated and just a good person. So if you can find those people, let them go. Let them run. The best thing I can do for him is stay out of his way, support him all I can, and let him build it. The more I would have my thumb on him, I feel, the slower it would go. And he's just wired that way to run. I saw a thing, so we're almost in November. And we got 2 more months left in this decade. So how was this decade for you? Did you get some things done? Are you different? Are you better? Are you where you want to be? Are you going that way? Or is it about the same as 10 years ago? So 10 years ago was 2009, almost 2010. If you look back, how different is your life? Is it better? Is it worse? Those decisions you made back then, are you the same? Are you pretty much the same, just 10 years older? I can tell you, it goes faster and faster every 10 years. I'm 52, and these are the prime. If you're listening, the prime money-making years in your life are normally somewhere between, say, 40 and 60. Those are the prime money-making years that you have the most influence, you have the most knowledge, you've kind of gotten through probably some of your dumber maneuvers in life, and you can really start accumulating wealth, building things, making a legacy, helping others, and really making waves if you want. And so, 2 more months left in this decade. Do you think, is it time to hustle? Is now the time to hustle? Is every day the time to hustle? Do you have a plan that is going to, make a difference in your life and, really importantly, other people's lives? So I had a couple dumb is real. Let me see how much time I've got left. I had a couple dumb is real situations happen that I guess I'll just do one of them, and it's just fitting for this week. So I was texting my son Saxon, and it was when Dad was in really bad condition, and luckily I got a phone call from my sister-in-law. Said, you better come up here. We don't think he's going to make it too long. And we got on the road, and my son flew in from Texas, and we all were there with him. And it was really great. And we stayed with him till pretty late at night. And then I'm not sure I mentioned this, but I had heart surgery this week too. The day my dad died, I had heart surgery, and I had it at 10 o'clock, and I didn't want to cancel it because I couldn't do anything for my dad, and I'd been waiting for a long time. They went in and did what's called an ablation, not a major heart surgery, went up through an artery in my leg and fixed something in my heart that was making it go crazy. Well, I left at 10 because I had to be back in Nashville. I left at 10 at night. But my dad passed at 6:20 that next morning. And I sent a text to my son. I said, got to tell you, Dad passed at 6 this morning. And now here's the dumb as real part. He showed me Google predictive text, predictive answers. The predictive answers were, congratulations, awesome, good job, wow. And that was the 4 selective words that you could have selected for that sentence of Dad passed. So that was dumb. But, it's just, I think it thought Dad passed a grade or passed, a test or whatever. But I guess the way I said it, but that was pretty hard. He sent me that. I said, Google really needs to work on the predictions. So that's it. All right, guys. Well, a little bit of a shorter time. I should be back on track, back every week. I will have some more things, but this one was just a reflection on my father. And if you've still got your father, go give him a hug, give him a call today. Start making notes about, what little stories, the stories about what you've gone through, what you've done, the funny things about them, the quirky things about them. Write those down. They become important at some point. They become really important at some point. All right, guys, that's my time. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Gold Podcast. Please subscribe on iTunes or any place that you listen to podcasts. More information is also available at markstoner.com.